They say you never really know someone until they ask you to destroy your own dignity. I thought I knew my wife after 7 years of marriage. Every laugh line, every morning routine, every dream we'd built together brick by brick. But the woman who sat across from me that Friday night, dressed like she was going somewhere I'd never been invited, asking me to agree to something that would gut our marriage while keeping me around to pay for it. That was a stranger wearing my wife's face. My name is Daniel Foster, and I need to tell you what happened to my marriage. Not for sympathy, I don't need that anymore. But because there's something important here about knowing when to walk away, about recognizing your own worth when someone you love decides it's worthless. I'm 35, been swinging hammers and laying foundations for 15 years now. Construction work, the kind where you come home with sawdust in your hair and concrete under your fingernails. My hands are scarred and calloused, my back aches most mornings, but there's something honest about building things that last. When I frame a house, I know that family will live there for decades. When I pour a foundation, I know it'll hold firm against storms and time. I take pride in that kind of permanence. Michelle and I had been married 7 years when everything fell apart. 7 years of what I thought was a solid foundation, built on trust and mutual respect. We met when she was 25, working as a receptionist at a dental office. I was drawn to her laugh, the way she could make small talk feel meaningful. She was beautiful in that approachable way, not magazine perfect, but real. The kind of woman who looked good in anything, who made coming home feel like a reward. We never had kids, though we'd talked about it plenty. Michelle said she wasn't ready yet, wanted to enjoy being married first. I didn't push. We had time, or so I thought. She stayed home while I worked 60-hour weeks, sometimes more when big projects came up. It seemed to work for us. I provided, she managed the house, we built a life together in a modest 2-bedroom in a decent neighborhood. The kind of place my father would have been proud of. Safe streets, good schools nearby for when we were ready, neighbors who waved when you mowed the lawn. For years, our routine felt comfortable, real. I'd come home exhausted, and Michelle would be there at the door, usually with dinner ready or at least planned. We'd eat together, talk about our days, mine full of job sites and crew problems, hers quieter but still full of small details that mattered. Weekend mornings were for coffee in bed, afternoons for errands or just being lazy together. We made love regularly, not with the fire of newlyweds, but with the steady warmth of people who knew each other's bodies, who'd found their rhythm. Then about 6 months ago, things started shifting. Michelle joined what she called a social group. 5 or 6 women from the neighborhood who got together for wine nights every Thursday and weekend brunches at trendy spots downtown. At first, I was happy for her. She'd been isolated, spending too much time alone while I worked long days. I thought female friendships would be good for her, give her something to look forward to beyond my coming home each night. But these weren't normal friendships. The changes started small. Michelle's wardrobe shifted toward more revealing clothes, low-cut tops, shorter skirts, dresses that hugged her curves in ways that seemed designed for attention. When I complimented her or asked about a new outfit, she'd dismiss it casually. Just felt like trying something different, she'd say with a shrug. But I never remembered buying these clothes, and our budget was tight enough that I would have noticed expensive purchases. Her phone became an extension of her hand. Constant texting, frequent calls she'd take in private, laughter at messages she never shared. When I'd ask who she was talking to, it was always the same response. "Just the girls," she'd reply with a tone that suggested I shouldn't be interested in women's conversations. Fair enough, I thought. Everyone needs privacy. The intimacy died gradually, then suddenly. Michelle started claiming exhaustion, headaches, stress. When I'd reach for her in bed, she'd stiffen or turn away. "Not tonight," became her default response. Weekend mornings became rushing to get ready for brunch with the girls. Our quiet moments together evaporated, replaced by her endless preparation for social events I wasn't invited to. But it was the dinner conversations that really opened my eyes. Michelle became obsessed with talking about these women, how free they were, how they lived authentically, how they refused to settle or compromise their happiness. She'd go on about Sarah, who left her husband because he was holding her back, or Jennifer, who was exploring her options while technically still married. Every story seemed designed to plant seeds, to make me understand that staying in one relationship was somehow limiting, that commitment was a trap rather than a choice. I started paying closer attention to the details. These women weren't happy divorcees finding themselves. They were homewreckers encouraging each other's worst impulses. They'd meet at expensive restaurants I couldn't afford. Talk about their adventures with men who weren't their husbands. Validate each other's cheating and betrayals as empowerment and self-discovery. Michelle would come home from these gatherings energized in a way she never was after spending time with me. Her eyes would shine with excitement as she recounted their conversations. But when she looked at me, that light would dim. I could see her comparing, evaluating, finding me lacking against whatever fantasies these women were filling her head with. The warmth that used to greet me at the door was gone. Michelle would barely look up from her phone when I came home. Dinner became her talking at me rather than with me. Monologues about her friends' courage to leave boring relationships and pursue real happiness. When I'd try to engage, to ask about her day beyond the group, she'd give one-word answers and return to her phone. I noticed but didn't confront. Part of me hoped it was just a phase, middle-age restlessness, a need to feel young and attractive again. I told myself she was just finding herself, exploring friendships she'd missed out on. I worked harder, thinking if I provided more, contributed more, she'd remember what we had together. I picked up extra projects, brought home larger paychecks, surprised her with small gifts and dinner dates. I was wrong. The harder I tried, the more contempt I saw in her eyes. My efforts weren't romantic, they were pathetic. My work wasn't admirable, it was blue-collar drudgery that marked me as unambitious. My faithfulness wasn't loyalty, it was boring predictability. Everything I thought made me a good husband became evidence of my inadequacy. One Thursday night, while Michelle was in the bathroom getting ready for wine night, her phone buzzed on the dresser. I glanced at it reflexively, not snooping, just the natural response to a notification. The preview showed a text from Sarah. "Did you tell him about the open marriage thing yet? You can't keep living this lie forever." My blood turned cold. I stared at that message until the screen went dark, trying to process what I'd read. Open marriage? What lie? That night I heard Michelle in the bathroom, voice hushed but excited. "No, he has no idea," she whispered into the phone. "He's too busy playing blue-collar hero to notice anything. Tomorrow night I'm going to tell him." The laughter that followed was like ice water in my veins. This wasn't my wife anymore. This was a stranger corrupted by poison her friends had been feeding her for months. Friday evening, I came home from a particularly brutal day. 12 hours of concrete work in 90-degree heat, my shirt soaked through with sweat, my muscles screaming. All I wanted was a shower, dinner, and maybe a quiet evening with my wife. Michelle was in the living room, perfectly made up like she was heading somewhere special. Her hair was styled, makeup flawless, wearing a black dress I'd never seen before, expensive looking, cut low enough to show cleavage, short enough to be inappropriate for a married woman. She was scrolling through her phone, that familiar smile playing at her lips. "Hey," I said, dropping my work bag. "You look nice. Going out again?" She glanced up briefly, her expression flat and dismissive. "No, actually. I thought maybe we should stay in tonight. Talk." Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. This wasn't the voice of a wife wanting to reconnect. This was the voice of someone who'd made a decision and was about to announce it. "Great," I replied, trying to sound enthusiastic. "Let me grab a shower first. Then maybe we could order dinner and—" "I was thinking we could just talk now," she interrupted, setting her phone aside. "There are things we need to discuss about our marriage." I stood there in my work clothes, still dusty and tired, looking at this woman who'd once loved everything about my job, who used to massage my sore shoulders and tell me how proud she was of my work ethic. Now she looked at me like I was tracking mud through a museum. "Okay," I said, sitting across from her. "What's on your mind?" Michelle took a deep breath like she was steeling herself for something unpleasant. "Daniel, I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. About us, about what I want from life, about whether this marriage is really working anymore." "What do you mean?" I asked. "I mean, you come home every day covered in dirt, exhausted, with nothing to talk about except job sites and crew problems." she explained coldly. We eat dinner, watch TV, go to bed. Rinse and repeat. When was the last time we did something exciting? When did we last have a conversation that made me think? The criticism hit like a physical blow. Michelle, I work 60 hours a week, so you don't have to. I thought that was what we agreed on. I never agreed to be a 1950s housewife waiting around for her blue-collar husband to come home and validate her existence, she shot back. Her voice sharp now, cutting. I'm 32 years old, Daniel. I have needs, desires, dreams that go beyond keeping house for a construction worker. Construction worker. The way she said it made my job sound like failure, like something to be ashamed of. This from a woman who'd lived off my construction worker income for 7 years. What kind of dreams? I asked, though I was starting to suspect I already knew. Michelle shifted in her chair, gathering courage for whatever bombshell she was about to drop. I want to feel alive again, Daniel. I want passion, excitement, connection with people who stimulate me intellectually and emotionally. And I don't stimulate you? I questioned. Not anymore, she replied without hesitation. Maybe you never did, and I was just too young to realize it. 7 years of marriage dismissed as youthful ignorance. 7 years of love and loyalty reduced to a mistake she'd outgrown. So what are you saying? You want a divorce? I asked. No, she said quickly. I don't want to throw away everything we've built together. The house, the financial security, the stability. I just want more. I stared at her, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I want an open relationship, she announced. The words hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. For a moment, I couldn't process what she'd said. An open relationship. She wanted to stay married to me but sleep with other men. You want what? I managed to say. An open marriage, she repeated. I want the freedom to explore other connections while maintaining what we have here. Lots of couples do it, Daniel. It's called being mature about relationships. I could hear the rehearsed quality in her voice, like she'd practiced this speech. You want me to let you cheat on me? I stated flatly. It's not cheating if we both agree to it, she responded defensively. It's honesty. It's admitting that monogamy is an outdated concept that doesn't work for everyone. So you've already picked out the guy you want to be intimate with? I asked bluntly. She flinched at my language but didn't back down. There might be someone, yes. But that's not the point. The point is freedom, authenticity, not being trapped by arbitrary rules. I felt something cold and final settling in my chest. And what do I get out of this arrangement? You get to stay married to me, she answered. You get to keep the life we've built. And you get the same freedoms I'm asking for. I don't want to have intimacy with other women, Michelle. I want to be married to my wife, I replied. That's your choice, she said coldly. But you can't make that choice for me anymore. The mask was completely off now. She wanted the security I provided while getting her thrill somewhere else. She wanted me to be her cuckold. No, I said firmly. The word came out harder than I'd intended, but I meant it completely. No, she repeated, surprised. I'm not doing it. I'm not agreeing to an open marriage. I'm not giving you permission to cheat on me while I pay your bills, I declared. Michelle's expression shifted from surprise to anger. You can't just refuse to discuss this? I'm not discussing it. I'm rejecting it. Completely, I answered. This is exactly what I'm talking about. She exploded. You're so rigid, so closed-minded. You can't even have an adult conversation about what I need. What you need is to have intimacy with other men while staying married to me. Did I miss anything? I responded. You're being crude and reductive, she snapped. This is about emotional fulfillment. It's about you wanting to be a while keeping a husband, I interrupted. She stood up sharply, face flushed with anger. How dare you call me that? What else do you call a married woman who wants to sleep around? I asked. The fight was escalating fast, but I could see something else in Michelle's eyes. Surprised that I wasn't negotiating, wasn't trying to find a compromise. My friends warned me you'd react this way, she said defensively. They said men like you can't handle strong women who know what they want. There it was. Her sisters had coached her through this entire conversation. Your friends, I said slowly. The ones encouraging you to destroy your marriage. They're encouraging me to live authentically. To stop settling for less than I deserve, she replied. "And what you deserve is a husband who pays the bills while you sleep with other men," I stated. "If you can't give me what I need emotionally and physically, then yes, I deserve to find it elsewhere," she answered defiantly. I looked at this woman I'd loved for 7 years, really looked at her. The contempt in her eyes wasn't new. I could see now that it had been building for months. "Then leave," I said. The words came out calm, final, without anger or pleading. "What?" she asked, stunned. "If I can't give you what you deserve, then leave. Get a divorce. Find a man who can," I explained. Michelle stared at me like I'd slapped her. This wasn't in the script her friends had provided. "You're not serious?" she whispered. "Dead serious. You want freedom? Take it. You want to explore other connections? Do it." "But you're not doing it while married to me," I replied firmly. She tried different approaches: tears, promises, seduction. I physically removed her hand when she touched my arm. "You're not staying here," I told her. She grabbed her purse and keys, face twisted with rage. "You'll regret this, Daniel. You'll realize what you lost, and by then it'll be too late. The only thing I'm losing is a wife who wants to cheat on me." "I'll survive," I answered. Michelle slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. I heard her car start, tires squealing as she backed out. My phone was in my hand before I consciously decided to pick it up. I opened the browser and typed, "Best divorce attorney near me." My hands didn't shake. I called in sick the next morning. First time in 3 years I'd missed work for something that wasn't the flu. By 8 a.m., I was sitting in the waiting room of Williams and Associates. Family law. Robert Williams had 15 years of experience and specialized in high-asset divorces. The consultation room was exactly what you'd expect. Leather chairs, law books, diplomas covering one wall. Williams himself was mid-50s, gray at the temples, wearing an expensive suit. But he didn't look at me like I was out of place. "Tell me what happened," he said, pulling out a legal pad. I laid it all out: Michelle's demand for an open marriage, her threat to leave if I didn't agree, the months of emotional manipulation leading up to it. I kept my voice steady and factual, but inside I was still processing the magnitude of what had happened. Williams listened without judgment, taking notes occasionally. When I finished, he set down his pen and looked at me directly. "First question, do you want to save this marriage?" he asked. "No," I answered. The response came instantly, surprising me with its certainty. She made it clear what she thinks of me, of our marriage. "I want out." "Good. Makes this cleaner," he replied, flipping through his notes. "No kids?" "No," I confirmed. Her demand for an open marriage demonstrates abandonment of marital duties. Judges don't look favorably on that. "Her unemployment weakens her position significantly," he explained. "You'll likely keep the house since you can demonstrate sole financial responsibility. She might qualify for temporary spousal support, but minimal." "What's your advice on strategy?" I asked. "Strike fast and hard," Williams advised. "Serve her immediately before she has time to plan or hide assets. File on irreconcilable differences, but document her demands." Williams pulled out a retainer agreement. "I'll need $5,000 down. We can have papers drawn up by Monday, served by Tuesday. Can we do it faster?" I asked. He looked up from the contract. "How fast?" "Today. This afternoon," I replied. Williams studied me for a moment, probably trying to gauge whether this was emotional impulse or calculated decision. "It'll cost extra for rush service. But yes, we can have papers ready by lunch and served by 4 p.m. You sure about this?" he asked. I signed the retainer agreement and wrote a check for $6,000. "I'm sure." I drove home through familiar streets, past the elementary school where we'd planned to send our future kids, past the park where Michelle and I used to walk on Sunday mornings. Everything looked the same, but I felt like I was seeing it all for the first time. Michelle's car was in the driveway. She'd come home sometime after I left, probably expecting to find me ready to negotiate, willing to compromise. Instead, she'd found an empty house and a husband who'd spent his morning hiring a lawyer. I found her in the living room, still wearing yesterday's dress, but wrinkled now, her makeup smudged like she'd been crying. She looked up when I walked in, and I could see hope in her eyes, hope that I'd come to my senses. "Daniel, I'm so glad you're here," she began eagerly. "I've been thinking all night, and I realize we both said things we didn't mean. Maybe we can save it," I interrupted, sitting down across from her. I meant everything I said. The hope died in her eyes, replaced by something harder. So what now? You want to punish me for being honest about my needs? I'm not punishing you. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for, I replied. For the next hour, Michelle tried everything. Tears, anger, promises to cut contact with her friends, offers to go to counseling. She even tried seduction, moving closer, touching my arm, reminding me of what we'd had together. I felt nothing. Every word sounded hollow, every touch felt manipulative. She was only sorry because there were consequences now. At 3:45 p.m., I heard a car door slam outside. Michelle was in the middle of another tearful plea when the doorbell rang. Expecting someone? I asked. Michelle looked confused. No, I walked to the door and opened it. A middle-aged man in a cheap suit stood on my porch holding a manila envelope. Michelle Foster? He asked. She's inside, I replied, stepping aside. Michelle appeared behind me, still confused. I'm Michelle Foster. I have legal documents for you, he said, handing her the envelope and pulling out a clipboard. I need you to sign acknowledging receipt. I watched the color drain from Michelle's face as she realized what was happening. Her hands shook as she signed the form. The process server left without ceremony, and Michelle stood there holding the envelope like it might explode. What is this? She whispered. Your freedom, I answered. She tore open the envelope, pulled out the divorce papers, and read the first page. Her face went through a series of expressions: disbelief, shock, then rage. You filed for divorce? Today? She asked incredulously. This morning, I confirmed. You can't be serious. We haven't even tried to work this out, she protested. There's nothing to work out. You want an open marriage, I want a divorce. We're both getting what we want, I explained. This is insane. You're throwing away our entire marriage because I was honest about my feelings, she demanded. I'm ending our marriage because you stopped being my wife, I replied calmly. Pack your bags, Michelle. You need to be out of this house tonight, I told her. You're kicking me out? She asked, shocked. I'm asking you to leave. This is still legally your house too for now, but I don't want you here, I explained. Where am I supposed to go? She pleaded. Call your sisters. I'm sure they'll help you celebrate your newfound freedom, I suggested. For the first time since this whole thing started, Michelle looked truly scared. The reality was setting in. She'd gambled our marriage on my willingness to be humiliated, and she'd lost. By 7 o'clock, Michelle had packed what fit in her car. She kept trying to restart the conversation to find some angle that might change my mind. But I'd moved past anger into something colder and more final. I stood in the doorway and watched her load the last suitcase. She looked back at the house like she was seeing it for the first time. Or maybe seeing what she was really losing. I'll call you tomorrow, she said hopefully, when you've had time to think about this. Don't, I replied. She drove away slowly, like she expected me to chase after her. Instead, I closed the door and locked it. The house felt different immediately, quieter, cleaner somehow. My phone buzzed around 9 o'clock. Text message from Michelle. I'm staying at my parents'. Please think about what you're doing. We can fix this. I deleted the message without responding. I slept better that night than I had in months. Michelle returned the next morning with reinforcements, her parents flanking her protectively as we all took seats in the living room. Michelle told us what happened, her mother Patricia began gently but firmly. And while we don't agree with how she approached the situation, we think you're overreacting. Overreacting to what, exactly? I asked. Her father, Frank, leaned forward. She had some concerns about your marriage, Daniel. Maybe she didn't express them perfectly, but throwing her out and filing for divorce? That's extreme. I looked at Michelle. Did you tell them what you actually asked for? Michelle's eyes darted away. I told them we had a disagreement about the future of our relationship. That's an interesting way to put it, I replied. Turning to her parents, I continued. Did she mention that she demanded an open marriage? That she wanted permission to sleep with other men while staying married to me? The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia's expression shifted from sympathetic to confused. Frank looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. Michelle? Frank's voice was dangerously quiet. Is that true? Michelle squirmed under her father's gaze. It's more complicated than that. Did you or did you not ask Daniel to agree to an open marriage? He demanded. I suggested that maybe we could explore, she stammered. Jesus Christ, Frank interrupted, putting his head in his hands. Michelle, what the hell were you thinking? Those women, Patricia said suddenly, understanding dawning in her voice. Those friends of yours. This was their idea, wasn't it? Michelle's silence was answer enough. Frank stood up abruptly. We're leaving. Patricia, get your purse. Frank, wait, Patricia protested. No. I'm not sitting in this man's house and listening to our daughter explain why she thought it was acceptable to destroy her marriage, he declared firmly. Looking at Michelle with disgust, he added, I raised you better than this. Daddy, please, Michelle pleaded. Don't daddy me. You made your choice. You wanted to act like a single woman? Now you are one, he replied coldly. Patricia tried to mediate. Michelle, honey, maybe you could apologize, try to work things out. There's nothing to work out, I interjected. Your daughter made it very clear what she thinks of me and our marriage. I'm just giving her what she asked for. I made a mistake, Michelle protested desperately. I got bad advice from friends who I thought cared about me. But that doesn't mean we have to throw away 7 years. You threw it away, Frank said coldly. The moment you decided Daniel wasn't enough for you. After they left, the house felt even quieter. Michelle's parents had seen the situation clearly and supported my decision. That meant more than they probably knew. My phone started ringing around noon. Michelle calling from her parents' house. I let it go to voicemail. Tears, apologies, promises to do better, pleas for me to reconsider. I deleted it. She called 6 more times that day. I didn't answer any of them. The next few days followed a pattern. Multiple calls, increasingly desperate voicemails, long texts explaining how sorry she was. She showed up at the house twice. I didn't answer the door. On Thursday, she sent a particularly long text. I left the group, told them I never wanted to see them again. I know what they did to me, how they poisoned my mind against you. Please, Daniel, can we just talk? I'll do anything to fix this. I called Robert Williams instead. She's panicking, I told him. Calling constantly, showing up at the house, promising to change everything. Classic pattern, Williams replied. Reality is setting in. Any contact from her lawyer yet? I don't think she's hired one, I answered. She will. Probably shopping around, trying to find someone who'll take the case on contingency. Unemployed spouse in a divorce has limited options, he explained. That night, Michelle tried a different approach. Instead of calling, she came to the house around 9 p.m. and sat in her car in the driveway. Just sat there like she was waiting for me to come out and invite her back in. I watched her through the bedroom window. She looked pathetic, slumped over the steering wheel, occasionally wiping her eyes. This woman who'd been so confident when she'd demanded an open marriage was now reduced to camping in my driveway like a stalker. After an hour, she gave up and drove away. She was back the next night and the night after that. On Sunday, I'd had enough. When I saw her car pull up, I walked outside and approached the driver's side window. Michelle rolled it down eagerly, hope lighting up her face. Daniel, I've been hoping we could, she began. Stop coming here, I interrupted. The hope died. I just want to talk, she pleaded. There's nothing to say. You made your choice, I made mine. It's over, I replied firmly. It doesn't have to be over. We can go to counseling, she suggested desperately. Michelle, listen to me very carefully, I said. You asked me to let you cheat on me. When I said no, you threatened to leave. I called your bluff. That's the end of the story. But I realize now how wrong I was, she protested. You realize now that your plan backfired. You thought I'd cave, agree to some version of what you wanted. Instead, you're facing divorce and living in your parents' basement, I responded. I love you, she whispered. No, you don't. You love the security I provided. But you don't love me. If you did, you never would have asked me to agree to your cheating, I answered. Michelle started crying again. Daniel, please. Doesn't 7 years of marriage count for anything? It counted for everything. Until you decided it wasn't enough, I replied. I turned and walked back to the house. She sat there for another hour, but I didn't look out the window again. She didn't come back after that night. The calls and texts gradually tapered off too. 3 weeks after I'd filed, Williams called with an update. She hired a lawyer. Cheapest one she could find, he reported. He called this morning wanting to discuss settlement terms. What kind of settlement? I asked. The usual. She wants the house. half the retirement accounts, permanent spousal support. Standard wish list for an unemployed spouse, he explained. And what did you tell him? I inquired. Williams chuckled. I told him to review the circumstances that led to the filing and call me back when he had more realistic demands. 2 days later, Michelle's lawyer called back. She was accepting our settlement offer. Half the liquid assets, about $8,000 total. Her car, personal belongings, and 6 months of temporary spousal support. I kept the house, retirement accounts, my truck. Clean break. I felt nothing when Williams gave me the news. No relief, no satisfaction, no regret. Just a sense of completion, like finishing a long and unpleasant job. The courthouse was exactly what you'd expect. Marble floors, fluorescent lighting, and institutional atmosphere that made everything feel final and official. I sat in the hallway outside courtroom 3C, wearing the same suit I'd worn to our wedding 7 years earlier. Michelle arrived 15 minutes late with her bargain basement lawyer. She looked terrible, thin, pale, wearing a dress that looked like it came from a clearance rack. The confident woman who demanded an open marriage 3 months ago had been replaced by someone who looked defeated and desperate. When they called our case, we filed into the courtroom like opposing armies laying down weapons. Judge Patricia Hernandez presided, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd probably seen every variation of human marital failure. This is an uncontested dissolution of marriage based on irreconcilable differences, the judge announced after reviewing our file. Both parties have agreed to the terms of settlement. Mrs. Foster, is that correct? Michelle's voice was barely audible. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Foster? The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor, I confirmed. The judge flipped through several pages. Mrs. Foster, you understand that you're waiving your right to permanent spousal support in exchange for 6 months of temporary support? Yes, Your Honor, Michelle replied quietly. And you're both satisfied that this settlement is fair and equitable? The judge inquired. This was the moment I'd been dreading, not because I had second thoughts, but because I knew Michelle might try one last desperate gambit. Instead, she just nodded. Yes, Your Honor, she answered. Judge Hernandez signed several documents and looked back at us. The dissolution of marriage between Daniel Foster and Michelle Foster is hereby granted, effective immediately. You are both free to remarry. Good luck to you both. Just like that, 7 years of marriage were legally erased. No drama, no final confrontation, just bureaucratic efficiency and the sound of a gavel. Michelle was crying quietly as we left the courtroom. Not the manipulative tears she'd used during our fights, but genuine grief for what she'd thrown away. I felt a moment of pity for her, but it passed quickly. As I walked out of the courthouse, I could hear Michelle sobbing behind me. But I didn't look back. That chapter of my life was closed permanently. The alarm goes off at 5:30 a.m., but instead of dragging myself out of bed to work for someone else, I'm up early to review project schedules for Foster Construction, the company I built from the ground up after my world fell apart. It started small. 2 years after the divorce, I used my savings and a business loan to buy a truck and tools, took on small residential jobs. Now Foster Construction employs 15 people and handles everything from custom homes to commercial renovations. Last year, we pulled in $800,000 in revenue. The modest house I'd fought to keep in the divorce has been transformed, expanded, upgraded, now worth triple what Michelle and I originally paid. But the real transformation isn't in the business or the house. It's in the man who owns both. Sarah Martinez came into my life 3 years ago. She was a high school English teacher, 34, never married, fiercely independent. While renovating her sister's kitchen, Sarah asked intelligent questions about the structural work, seemed genuinely interested in the craftsmanship. Most people just want to know when it'll be finished, I told her over coffee a week later. You actually cared about how it gets done. I like understanding how things work, she replied with a smile. Whether it's literature or load-bearing walls, we took it slow. Sarah had her own house, career, retirement accounts. She didn't need me to provide for her or give her life meaning. She wanted me in her life because she enjoyed my company. The difference was profound. There was no game playing, no manipulation, no hidden agendas. When Sarah had concerns, she addressed them directly. After years of trying to decode Michelle's passive-aggressive hints, Sarah's straightforward communication felt like a revelation. Last year, we moved in together, into my house, which Sarah helped redesign. She insisted on paying her share despite my protests that I could handle the expenses. "I'm not interested in being supported," she said firmly. "I'm interested in being a partner." Last month, I proposed, not with desperate hope of locking down someone I was afraid of losing, but with calm confidence of a man who'd found someone worth building a life with. Sarah said yes immediately, then surprised me. "I've already talked to my lawyer about a prenup," she announced. "I think we should both protect what we've built independently." If Michelle had suggested that, I would have been hurt. From Sarah, it just made sense. We were both established adults with assets and careers. Meanwhile, Michelle's life had remained frozen in consequences. I don't actively keep tabs on my ex-wife, but in a town this size, information travels. She still lives with her parents, though they're both pushing 70 now. She works full-time at a medical office. Better than the nail salon job she'd taken immediately after the divorce, but still far from the comfortable life she'd given up. She never remarried. Friends mentioned seeing her on dating apps, but apparently men aren't lining up to marry a woman whose previous husband divorced her for demanding an open relationship. The story had made rounds in our social circle. People occasionally ask if I regret being so harsh with Michelle. I wasn't harsh, I was self-respecting. Michelle made a choice to value her desires over our marriage. I responded by valuing my dignity over her presence in my life. Sarah and I are planning a small wedding, immediate family and close friends. We're both older, more settled, less interested in spectacle than substance. "Think you'll want kids?" Sarah asked recently as we discussed our future. "Maybe," I replied.
Do you?
"Maybe, but I'm happy either way. I'm not looking to you to complete my life, Daniel. You enhance it," she answered. That's the difference between Sarah and Michelle in one sentence. Michelle had expected me to fill all the empty spaces in her life. When I inevitably failed to be everything to her, she'd looked elsewhere, first to her toxic friends, then to the fantasy of other men. Sarah approaches our relationship as an addition to an already full life, not as a replacement for an empty one. She has her career, friendships, interests, goals. I'm not responsible for her happiness, I just get to share in it. 8 years ago, I thought my life was ending when Michelle walked out that door demanding I accept her infidelity. I had no idea it was just beginning. Michelle taught me what I wouldn't accept. Sarah showed me what I deserved. And sometimes, learning what you won't tolerate is the first step toward finding what you actually want. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.